Here's what nobody tells you about identity fraud. It doesn't look like a crime scene. It looks like a credit card statement on a Tuesday morning. I'm Amanda, 35 years old, real estate agent in Colorado. And I'm about to tell you the story of how my husband tried to financially destroy me while pretending to love me. But here's the thing, I didn't just survive it. I became fluent in forensic accounting, police procedures, and exactly how to dismantle a man's entire life using documentation and the legal system. This isn't a story about crying into my pillow for 3 years. This is a story about what happens when someone tries to gaslight a woman who keeps receipts. 12 years of marriage. That's what I had with David. 12 years that felt solid, comfortable, normal, the kind of marriage you don't worry about because it just works. We bought our house in a nice suburb outside the city. 2 kids. We had separate bank accounts because I was independent, and David never pushed back on that. He had his money, I had mine. We split the big bills. It worked. David was charming in that way certain men are, not romantic movie charming, but reliable charming. He showed up. He paid his share. He made jokes at dinner. We weren't madly in love after 12 years, but we weren't miserable either. We were just comfortable. I managed my own finances obsessively. Call it paranoia, call it experience. I'd seen too many real estate clients get destroyed by trusting the wrong person with their money. So David and I had a joint credit line for emergencies and family expenses, but I monitored it like a hawk. Every statement, every charge, I reviewed it. Then life happened. Work got busy. The market was crazy that spring. I was showing properties most weekends. David was managing the house and the kids. We were doing the usual dance, passing each other in hallways, coordinating schedules via text, existing in that weird space where you're married but barely connected. I started noticing small things. David was vague about where he was going. Client meeting downtown. Networking thing. Grabbing lunch with a buddy. Nothing suspicious on its own, but they were happening more frequently. Maybe once or twice a week. And then there was the credit card statement. It was just sitting in my email inbox like any other month. I scrolled through, doing my automatic mental accounting, grocery store, gas station, utilities, restaurant, and then I saw it. A $45,000 advance on our joint credit line. $45,000. I read it twice, thinking I'd misunderstood. Then I checked the date. 15 days ago. 15 days ago, someone transferred 45 grand out of our account. My heart started doing that thing where it feels like it's in your throat. I immediately checked my email, looking for authorization confirmations, loan documents I might have forgotten signing. Nothing. 0 notifications from the bank. That's when I called David. Hey, honey, quick question. Did we approve a $45,000 credit advance? He went quiet. Then, yeah, we did. Remember? We talked about it a couple months ago. You said we could go for it if we found the right investment. My stomach dropped. David, I was in Cabo 2 months ago. With my sister. All of it. Oh, babe, maybe it was more recent than that, he said, his voice doing this weird thing. Too casual, like he was testing something. 3 weeks ago? We talked about it after dinner. I pulled up my calendar. 3 weeks ago, I was in Denver the entire time. I had 17 client showings logged. I don't remember that conversation. You're probably just stressed with work, he said. And here's where it started, the part that would later make me understand what gaslighting actually feels like at the cellular level. Amanda, you've been so scattered lately. Maybe you need to talk to someone about your memory. I did something that day that changed everything. I didn't fight with him. I didn't yell. I just said, send me the loan documentation, and hung up. He said he'd get it to me. He didn't. Instead, over the next few days, David's behavior shifted. He became defensive. If I brought it up, he'd say I was being paranoid, or that I was attacking him, or that I didn't trust him, which, wild irony considering what was happening. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. I requested copies of every transaction from the bank. I pulled my credit report. I called the credit card company and started asking questions. The customer service representative told me something that made my blood go cold. The authorization on that advance had been flagged because my signature didn't match the digital upload. Didn't match. So David had forged my signature to get access to $45,000. I hired a financial analyst, not as a divorce move yet, just to understand what was happening. She was brilliant. Within a week, she'd traced the money. It went directly to a jewelry store in Boulder, about 30 minutes from our house. A high-end place, very expensive, very discreet. I called the jewelry store and asked about recent engagement ring purchases. We can't discuss client purchases without authorization, they said. I purchased one recently using my name, I lied. Can you confirm the account? They couldn't confirm, but my heart was already screaming the truth. David had bought an engagement ring. Here's where I became a detective. I pulled David's location history from our phone plan. Yes, we shared access. Yes, that's legal. And found something fascinating. He'd been going to Boulder. Repeatedly. 23 times over 4 months. Always for 2-hour windows. Always claimed as client meetings. Then I checked his credit card. The one he thought I didn't monitor. And there it was, dozens of charges at restaurants in Boulder. Upscale places. Date night places. Charges that corresponded directly with his location history. My husband was having an affair. And he'd taken out a $45,000 loan in my name to buy her an engagement ring. I don't remember how long I sat there looking at this information. Time does something weird when your world is being rebuilt from the ground up. You could tell me it was 5 minutes or 5 hours, and I wouldn't know. Then I got angry. Not screaming, throwing things angry. That came later. This was a different kind of anger, cold, clear, energetic. The kind that says, okay, now I'm going to win. I called my friend Marcus, who's a lawyer. Criminal defense, but he knew people. I told him what was happening, and he said 2 words that made me feel alive again. Document everything. So I did. I pulled together a file. Bank statements, credit card transactions, his location history, phone records, the jewelry store receipt. Yes, I eventually got that, with the girlfriend's name on the delivery paperwork. Every text he'd sent me where I'd asked about his day, and he lied. Every moment I could prove he was in Boulder when he said he was somewhere else. I created a timeline. 47 pages. And then I made a decision that would become the centerpiece of what happened next. I wasn't just going to get divorced. I was going to make sure David understood what happens when you commit fraud. I called Marcus and told him what I wanted to do. I want to file identity fraud charges. I want to go after him criminally, not just civilly. I want him charged with forging my signature. I want the forensic accountant prepared to testify about the fraudulent loan. I want everything documented for court. Marcus listened. Then he said, that's going to be expensive. Not just my fees. You'll need a forensic accountant, possibly an investigator, and you need to prepare for him to fight back hard. How much? Probably $20,000 to $30,000 before we even get to the divorce settlement. I thought about that for approximately 5 seconds. Let's do it. We filed a police report for identity fraud. That's a federal crime. Forging someone's signature to fraudulently obtain credit. That's serious. I walked into the Colorado police station with my 47-page timeline, my bank statements, my forensic accountant's analysis, and my complete credit history showing I'd never authorized that advance. The detective assigned to my case was a woman named Shelley. She'd been doing this for 18 years, and I could tell she'd seen this pattern before. You documented this incredibly well, she said. Most people don't. Within 48 hours, the police opened a criminal investigation. Then I filed a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau about the fraudulent loan application. I contacted the jewelry store directly and provided them with documentation, asking them to cooperate with the fraud investigation. And here's the thing that nobody tells you about having proof. It becomes radioactive. Everyone wants to distance themselves from it. The jewelry store started cooperating immediately. They confirmed the ring purchase. They confirmed the fraudulent representation of the loan purpose. Meanwhile, David's behavior shifted again. He wasn't gaslighting anymore. He was panicking. He tried to convince me to drop the charges. This will destroy my career, he said. This will destroy the kids' lives. We can work through this privately. I told him, you should have thought about that before you forged my name on federal loan documents. Then I made a decision that changed the entire game. I identified David's girlfriend. Her name was in the jewelry store thank you note. I found her employer, a dental practice in Boulder, through simple Google searching. I wrote a letter. Professional, factual, not threatening. I documented that this woman was involved in a fraudulent loan scheme. I included copies of the loan documents, the police report, and the jewelry store receipts. I sent it to the practice owner. What I did not do, and this is critical, is threaten anything. I didn't demand she be fired. I didn't make accusations. I simply provided factual information about her involvement in federal fraud. The letter was devastatingly effective. The practice owner apparently believed that working with someone complicit in identity fraud was bad for business. Within a week, David's girlfriend was terminated. But David didn't know that yet. I filed for divorce. And here's where I made sure he understood what was happening. I filed simultaneously with his company HR department. Not for revenge. For documentation. Because if he was taking out fraudulent loans using joint credit, I needed to make sure that his employer understood he was a legal liability. His company's legal department got very interested in that conversation. The divorce proceedings were, let's call it intense. David tried everything. He hired an attorney who claimed the whole thing was a misunderstanding. He tried to blame me for negligent financial monitoring. He claimed the girlfriend was a business associate and the ring purchase was an investment. None of it mattered. The court appointed a neutral financial examiner who looked at the evidence Marcus and I had compiled. Her conclusion, David had committed fraud, forged Amanda's signature, and taken out a loan under false pretenses. The loan purpose was not a rental property investment, it was an engagement ring for his affair partner. The judge was not amused. In the first ruling, the court held David liable for the entire $45,000 fraudulent loan. Not split. Not divided. All of it. He was responsible for every penny. Then came the custody determination. I won primary custody with David getting supervised visitation 2 weekends a month. He would pay $3,200 in monthly child support. Then came the asset division. Because David had committed fraud and financial abuse, the judge authorized an unfavorable division, 90% of marital assets to me, 10% to him. That included the house. I kept the house. My legal fees? $28,000. The court ordered David to pay 80% of that. So David's financial situation shifted like this. He owed $45,000 for the fraudulent loan. He owed $22,400 in legal fees for my representation. He was paying $3,200 monthly in child support for 10 years. That's another $384,000 he'd have to come up with. He was losing his half of the marital assets, approximately $220,000 worth of equity. He was also facing criminal charges. Federal identity fraud carries serious penalties. Forging someone's signature on a loan application is a felony in Colorado. David's case went before a magistrate, and what happened next was basically him watching his options evaporate. The prosecutor had police reports, bank statements, forensic accountant testimony, and David's own contradictory statements. The girlfriend, now jobless and angry, ended up cooperating with the investigation. Turns out she was willing to testify that David had told her he'd handle the finances and that she didn't know the ring was being purchased fraudulently. She threw him under the bus. Completely. David copped to a misdemeanor identity fraud charge. Not a felony, that would have been prison time. But a misdemeanor came with its own consequences. Probation. Fines. Court-ordered restitution. And a criminal record that would follow him forever. Then his employment situation imploded. His company's legal team, having been made aware of the fraud charges, put him on administrative leave. Within 2 months, he was terminated. Not for the affair, that's his personal business, but for being a financial liability to the company who had committed federal fraud. What nobody tells you about financial destruction is that it cascades. One thing collapses, then it triggers the next collapse. David couldn't pay the $45,000 loan. The credit card company sent it to collections. His credit score dropped from 750 to 480. That meant no car loans, no apartment rentals, no credit of any kind. He tried to get a new job. Every background check flagged the criminal record. No major company would hire him. He ended up at some entry-level position, making a fraction of what he'd earned before. He couldn't make the child support payments. Courts take that seriously. Suddenly, he was facing contempt charges. The girlfriend moved to New Mexico to escape the social fallout. Her dental career was essentially over. Background checks, professional reputation, all of it compromised. Her family, once they learned what happened, disowned her. I didn't make that happen, but I also didn't prevent it when the information was out there. David moved into a studio apartment in a neighborhood that was significantly less comfortable than our suburban home. Studio. Alone. Facing years of child support payments, restitution, and the knowledge that he destroyed his entire life for a woman who disappeared the moment he became inconvenient. It took about 18 months for the dust to settle. The divorce was finalized. I kept the house, the kids, the majority of the assets. David had supervised visitation and a $3,200 monthly child support obligation that would continue until our kids turned 18. The criminal case closed. David served his probation and paid his restitution. His criminal record is permanent. The civil case with the credit card company ended in him having to pay the $45,000, just like the court ordered. Collections agencies are very persistent. Was it satisfying? Yes, but not in the way you'd think. The satisfaction wasn't seeing David suffer. The satisfaction was knowing that I'd handled it correctly. I'd documented everything. I'd followed the law exactly. I'd used the system precisely as it was designed to be used. And the system had worked. I didn't destroy David's life out of revenge. I just responded appropriately to his fraud, and his life imploded as a direct consequence of his own choices. There's a difference. What changed in me was fundamental. For 12 years, I trusted. Completely. I believed in marriage and partnership and the idea that if you were a good person to someone, they'd be good back to you. I prioritized connection over verification. I thought that was what love looked like. It's not. Love is verification. Love is staying awake. Love is paying attention when something feels off. Love is keeping receipts. I started doing something I'd never done before. I created a comprehensive financial literacy guide for women. I called it Marry Smart, a real estate agent's guide to financial independence. It covered everything from joint accounts to credit monitoring to knowing what your net worth actually is. Then I started a podcast. Originally just for friends, but it grew. Financial independence, protecting yourself from spousal fraud. We started with my episode, The Full Story, Unfiltered, and it got 1.2 million downloads. Other women started reaching out. They'd recognize their own situations in my story. They started asking me for consultation, how to document abuse, how to protect themselves financially, how to recognize the red flags they'd missed. I started working with 2 divorce attorneys in the area, helping them understand financial documentation strategies. I became an expert witness in fraud cases. And most importantly, I taught my daughters something my mother never taught me. I taught them, trust but verify. I taught them how to monitor their own finances, how to recognize when someone was lying, how to document everything, how to understand that love doesn't mean blindness and partnership doesn't mean surrendering your financial autonomy. Here's what I want you to understand, watching this. This isn't a story about a man getting what he deserved. It's a story about what happens when you stop being passive in your own life. I didn't destroy David. He destroyed himself. I just refused to let him take me down with him. I stayed calm. I gathered evidence. I followed the law. I let the system do what systems are designed to do. And I came out the other side not broken, but transformed. If you're in a relationship where something feels off, it probably is. Trust that feeling. Document it. Talk to someone. Protect yourself. Love should never require you to ignore red flags. Mine finally taught me that.